This is the Let's Talk podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching if you're watching the video form, and listening if you're doing the audio only. Today I've got the just one of the coolest guys ever. Someone that when I first got into this industry, I made it a point to find the people that I think that I would connect with. And find professionals in the space that were established already. Unfortunately for Eric, he was one of those guys. And now he's kind of, he's an integral part here of the Volli team. And, he had no say about that. So I'm very, very glad to have Eric on. I'm going to stop rambling. I'll let you do your own personal intro. Eric, thanks for coming on and being a guest on the Let's Talk podcast.
Well, Travis, it's good to be here. It's been great to know you and the Volli team over the last couple years. Yeah, man, thrilled to be here. Really excited about the conversation.
Yeah, I love it. So just start off, who you are, with the professional aspect taken out. What do you do? Maybe a little bit about your family, how you grew up, any fun, interesting stories. I really like to have the podcast be more centered around the personality of the person and not just the business side. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. So been in the tech space for almost 25 years. I feel like that big number, 25, ages me a bit, but we're at 24 right now. So we're close. I've had the opportunity to work really all over the country. Started my personal and professional life in the Phoenix area, moved to the Twin Cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, just north of 11 years ago. My wife and I have 7 kids, and she stays at home with the kids. I go to work every day and do that thing. And I would say the last 5 years for me on a personal note have been a real journey. I think I had settled into being in the tech space, going to work, coming home. I've gotten more involved on LinkedIn, which I know has really changed things for you. As I got more involved on LinkedIn, COVID hit. I started my own podcast now, roughly 3.5 years ago, roughly 150 episodes in, wrote a book. And the last couple of years, man, have been a great journey. And it is really, and we would have this conversation well outside of recording, but it's on the backs of a small body of people that have supported me, supported my endeavors, supported my crazy ideas. And it's really, man, it's guys like you, it's guys like Josh that have been there when I had these harebrained ideas, that have said things like, all right, man, well, you said you're going to write a book. What's it about? When are you going to start? When are you going to publish it? And the support of guys like you over the last number of years has really meant the world.
I love that. It's I think you're definitely someone that a lot of the industry looks up to. You're definitely one of the, lack of a better term, figureheads of our industry. But yeah, talking the channel, this technology industry. I think the first time I met Eric was at Channel Partners in 2021, and he's just one of those people that I feel like you have something to talk about with every single person that you meet. So I remember the first time I talked to him, I was just expecting a hi and bye, but I think I sat there and I talked with him for probably about 5 to 10 minutes. So it's the personality that you bring is definitely apparent in everything you do. You mentioned a lot of what you're doing, and so you did mention you wrote a book, and I think that is something definitely to be proud of. I always had these lofty dreams to do it myself, but for me, it's patience. So maybe talk a little bit about what that process was like. Maybe kind of where did that first spark from, and then kind of give that journey a little bit, because I think that's an interesting thing. I think it's really it's cool. It's cool to say that you wrote a book.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a journey. So if you knew me 4 years ago, I wasn't a reader. I wasn't doing the podcast. I was learning about the tech industry because that's where I grew up. Literally, personally, mom was in the business. I got into the business professionally. It's what took care of the family, and I just beyond going to work, I wanted to come home and be a dad. And I was on an airplane, as I write in the book. I was on an airplane now about 3 years ago, and I had felt compelled to write a book. I had the podcast, which is all about leadership and culture. So I felt like, all right, God, if you want me to write a book, and right now the whole thing for me is leadership and culture, it's going to be a leadership and culture book. Now, mind you, the me of today, I read about a book a week in preparation for podcasts. I've been on this personal journey of growth and maturation. And when I was sitting on that plane 2.5, 3 years ago, I was watching a television show that my son had gotten me into, just trying to keep up with my oldest son. And there's a football player and a football coach at the end of a football game. And the player, Spencer, was sort of lamenting on the field of this being the first game since his father passed away. I'm not emotionally drawn into TV shows. I'm not the guy that's going to cry at a movie. And then coach walks up and says, Spence, how you doing, man? So I'm all right, coach. It's the first game without my dad. I wish he were here. And coach leans in, puts his arm around Spencer and says, it's a year of first for you, man. That year of firsts is the hardest. And when I tell you that I was crying on an airplane, I was flying back from Dallas, coming back to Minneapolis, and I started sobbing. I like tears, snot, all of the things, because that statement, that year of firsts, is something that I had been through. We were at the time about 5 years in. We're now almost, golly, man, almost 7 years into not being in relationship with our oldest daughter, who's 23. And we had our year of firsts. And it dawned on me right then and there that I needed to write a book about that journey. Now, the book over the last couple of years, as I was writing it, sort of morphed into me pulling out some of the leaders and guests from my podcast to have them join the conversation, sharing the story of others, the loss of my sister-in-law to alcohol addiction,
Yes.
the loss of a local teenager. I spoke to her family. Camille committed suicide. And then again, some of the journey of some of the guests that I've had on the show. And really the book is our collective journey. It's a journey of worthiness. It's a journey of leadership and culture. Writing a book is the hardest thing I've ever tried to do.
Yeah.
I was grateful to get it over the finish line and really honored by the people that have chosen to read it. I've gotten a lot of support from this community, and I'm super grateful for that. The touching piece is the Amazon reviews of the readers I've never met, or the emails from people that just, hey, someone recommended the book, and I picked it up, and this is the little nugget that really had an impact on me.
I love that. You know, it's a what a great contribution to give back, and I think there's I like that you do also bring in other minds because you know everybody has something that we can learn from one another, and that's one thing that has always drawn me towards you as a just not only on the personal side but in the professional space is like you said, LinkedIn's been really big. So when I started on LinkedIn, I wanted to follow all the people I thought were the, you know, the thought leaders and everything. And I thought, saying thought a lot, but out of all the people that I found to be the leaders of the industry, I always felt that you came at it more from um, uh, really pitching, taking care of mental health, and that's always been an issue that's been near to dear to me with my Tourette's, and you know, having a daughter growing up with Tourette's. That's far worse than mine, and the toll that can take. So it's I think that is one thing that probably draws a lot of people to you is you don't you're there for kind of just everything, and that um, mental health is one of the it's very important, and a lot of people in our industry neglect it,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So it's that kind of one thing that really I thought is a staple of the Eric Brooker brand. Now, talking about the book, was there anything during the process that may have been more of a headache than others? Is there what was probably the worst part of the entire process?
So I wrote a really personal book. And so for me, the biggest challenge in the book was I had to answer questions I was unprepared for. So it took me roughly 2 years to write the book. If the book were not about me or in part about me, it probably would have gone much, much quicker. But I had to address there was a lot of brokenness, a lot of healing, a lot of things that I uncovered, man. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old. That was 40 years ago. And I'm
Yeah,
writing about it. And then all of a sudden I get emotional and I have to address things. But also, take Camille, for example. I felt a real call to ask her parents to participate in this book. I felt that call about 6 months after Camille committed suicide. Now, I don't know her parents well. We know each other a whole lot better now through a myriad of conversations and their participation in the book. But now I got to sit down and have a conversation. And I got to sit down and have a very difficult conversation. It's one, well,
well,
I'm going to
and
be
one that
honest.
not a lot of people like to talk about.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is I'm going to step back for just a second to the LinkedIn piece because
Yeah,
the thing that I learned about on LinkedIn on day one, right, wrong, or indifferent, someone said, "Hey, be your authentic self," and
one hundred
so the
percent.
idea of dancing around on this business forum about the business that I own or the business that I work for and pretending that this is the single greatest thing I've ever done didn't feel authentic. Now, I've
Yeah,
got a great gig. I love what I do. I love the people that I work with, but I wanted to be authentic. Someone said be authentic. Well, the authentic me is a person that wears his heart on his sleeve. I'm going to share my emotions. I'm going to tell you my sister-in-law died of alcohol addiction. But what I found on LinkedIn is that the more that I shared vulnerably, the more that I realized I was not alone. The more that I started to realize, Travis, man, you're not alone. You're not the only guy in this industry with Tourette's or suffering in their own respective right. And what it's enabled me to do is build real, authentic friendships. Not sit down at 10 o'clock at night and grab a beer before we all go to bed, but like, hey, man, what's on your heart? How's your marriage?
yeah,
Sorry you lost your kid. Whatever the conversation is, they're real and authentic.
right. Because that, I mean, that's what the human soul desires. It wants that one-on-one connection,
Yeah.
and that doesn't stop just because you're in a professional setting. I mean, we still crave that personality, and yeah, I love that. I think that's a good message to have, and it just kind of that whole theme is kind of across your entire your everything that you do. With the podcast, with your posts. Um, and I think that it's a skill that's lacking in the industry is people really being able to be themselves, and not just I always make it a point to on my LinkedIn. 90% of what I post is more just about me personally, and then 10% is the business side. It's I always I saw all of you guys doing it, so I was like, you know what, I like that approach. I think that's the better way, because I think about myself as a customer, and what I react to is I'd rather know the person that I'm talking to, um, and make them and feel personally like they're not just selling me a product, but they they know me enough that they think this product can solve something for me. So I think that especially in the telecom industry, being able to take that viewpoint that you hold, just on the personal side, but being able to transition that over to the business side of things too. I love that.
But it goes back to that adage of people buy from people they like and trust.
Yeah.
I shared about my sister-in-law in October of 2020 when it happened. And I've been to countless shows in this industry since then. And if there's an event that I have been to since October 27th of 2020, at minimum, one person at every event has walked up to me in confidence and said, "Hey, my husband has a drinking problem, and I I've never shared this with anybody, or I have a drinking problem and I'm trying to
Yeah.
get help. Do you know where I should start?" Vulnerability, and I talk about this a lot. Vulnerability begets vulnerability. When we go on social media, LinkedIn, Instagram,
Oh.
Facebook, TikTok, whatever, it
Mm-hmm.
is the highlight reel. I had a good friend of mine. We took a 2 week trip to Disneyland, Legoland, Universal. He called me afterward. How was the trip? We had a good conversation. Something was wrong. I said, "Man, what's going on?" He goes, "Well, I'm never going to be able to take that trip." And he was raw with me. He's like, I'm a little jealous that you're in the financial position to do that, because over the course of 2 weeks we posted all the fun stuff on the highlight reel that is social media. What I didn't
Mm-hmm.
tell him, or what I ended up telling him, but what I didn't share on social, was we packed our lunch most days. We took cases of water. We saved for the trip for 5 years. What I don't share on social, what you, the listener, don't share on social, is the sacrifices or the credit card debt that you make to do the things that we do.
Yeah.
And so we're comparing ourselves to a version of Travis or a version of Eric or Jessica or John or Joe that doesn't actually exist in real life.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that that's what makes it makes that's what make brands, not not just your brand, but any brands that you feel like the person first makes them so successful. And
Bingo.
it's not for success's sake, but it's just so um, you never know who's going to get affected by what you do or say. Um, like you said, you always have someone come up to you because they heard you talk about topic A, which is taboo, or topic B, which is taboo, but because someone in the public space, like you talked about it, is specifically with the suicide, it just allows more avenues of being able to meet people and connect with
Yeah.
people on a personal level. Actually, that's how I met one of our mutual friends, Jared Parker. I had I'm very active to talk about my Tourette's and everything. So I've always been public about that. And so he reached out to me in a private message on LinkedIn about Tourette's. So it's you never know what you're going to say is going to affect one person over another. So it's, to me, it's just, I want to connect with as many people as possible, because even though sometimes I'm grumpy, I do just love people, and I like to learn about people's stories, hear where they're from, what makes them who they are. So I like that, and more personalities in the space could take a cue from that.
The other thing that it does, Travis, is it enables us to find a common ground. So the conversation over the next 6 months is going to be Trump and Biden. The conversation over the next
Yes.
6 months is going to be religion or politics or some of these hot topics that inevitably you're not aligned with, likely,
Mm-hmm.
on all of those accounts with the person on the other end of the Zoom or the person at the other end of the bar. But what it enables you to do is build and establish a relationship authentically with people that you don't necessarily agree with
Yeah.
because you found a common ground on something that most people are unwilling to talk about.
Hmm. Just more ways for us to connect and work together than
Bingo.
against each other. So, no, I couldn't agree more. Um, uh, Now on to talk about more on the business side. You've been in the channel for a while now, and um, more. Let's just talk specifically about the channel specifically.
Yeah.
Not maybe any company in particular, but what has that journey kind of looked like for you? What have you kind of learned over the years, man? Maybe where you think the market's going or the channel's going. There's been a lot of shifts in our industry lately. A lot of people buying other people. So yeah, just kind of from your view, how's it been over the course of your tenure?
It's been a lot of change. When I started in the channel, I'm going to name names because I can, and it
That's
was
fine.
a very positive conversation. When I started in the channel, my first channel relationship was with Teleris.
Hmm.
We signed an agreement that moved along very quickly. I would say 30 to 60 days. I'd gotten to know Paula McKinnon, who at the time was at Teleris in charge of supplier management, an incredible person. She helped us get over the finish line. And then she called and said, "Hey, there's this event in St. Louis next week. We have an open slot. You should be there." Needless to say, I showed up at the event. Teleris, along with, for that matter, all of the TSDs at that time, rolled out the red carpet for suppliers. They introduced me to the supplier community. They introduced me to the partner community. And those days, Teleris, Intelisys, Avant, and some of the names, Telegration, that don't exist anymore,
Yeah.
it was very much just get to know people, just build relationships. People buy from people they like. They'll introduce you to the partners. And I would, golly, man, I would go to these events and I learned that I would get a dinner with the executive team at any of the TSDs if I just showed up the night before the event because they were all there. So I
Oh
was
yeah.
starting to put dinners together with the Ricks at Intelisys and the guys at Teleris and the folks at Avant and everybody else. But man, over the last 10 years, a lot's changed, right? The the folks at the top, they don't really move the needle for a channel manager. Even in many respects, the channel managers in the market
Hmm.
at the TSDs don't move the needle. I used to be able to pick up the phone and I'd call Christina Curtis at Teleris, or I'd pick up the phone and I'd call someone at Intelisys and say, "Hey, I know there's a partner in your market. This is the partner. I'd like to meet them. I'm going to fly in town. Let's do the dog and pony show."
Yeah.
Because it was kind of, as an old boss used to describe it, it's kind of like a bunch of pirates running around doing things, and they all got done. We all made good money, and there were unwritten rules, but there were no
Yeah.
hard and fast
There was
rules.
a code.
And then Intelisys was acquired by ScanSource, and Charles Bank came in and invested in Bridgepoint, and Columbia Capital came in and made some investments in Blue Wave that came out of nowhere, and Teleris, and then Avant took private equity money, and all of the sudden, everything looked different. The partner community looked different because subagents we're now coming, instead of a lot of us who used to show up in shorts and a polo are now in slacks and a jacket
Yeah.
because my business might get sold. I might have the opportunity to get pick your multiplier X for my business and sell to one of these private equity investors.
Hmm.
Or the TSD community needed to look different because private equity forced maturation upon them. The one thing that we've seen, and Cameron Olson and I have been working on this for now 6 or 8 months, is building a program to give suppliers the tools to be successful.
Okay.
Because Many channel chiefs, many VPs, many channel managers, myself included, are retreads. Nobody's taught us how to do it. We've just done it the same
Yeah.
way for X amount of years. So I think programmatically, we're trying to build a process. We are building a process that will give channel managers, VPs, channel chiefs, marketing firms the ability to standardize on process. Because again, as suppliers, we need to do it different. We need to add value to the channel managers and to the TSDs that we've never had to do. We need to bring them partners because that's the way they function. We need to bring them leads. We need to have an elevator pitch that is more than just, Travis, I'm a UCAS provider. We need to look and feel more
Yeah.
mature. The industry's changed dramatically over the number of years I've been in this.
Yeah, I think so. We're brand new. I mean, we came in with Volli in 2021 was channel partners was the first time. So it's been a very it's been a culture shock for us to say the least. But um, I and I agree with you, and I think it's actually ramped up probably the most over the past year or so of private capital coming in and kind of
Yeah.
the just I don't know the whole vibe from when we first came into to now. It's you can feel that it's different,
Yep.
and it's to me as a supplier, you know, I'm in the position. I'm just kind of just watching it all unfold. You know, not being able to really have any rhyme or reason to what's going on, but seeing a lot of these organizations buy a lot of each other, and so it's I was talking to who was I talking to? Well, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they just said it's starting to turn back into the wild west in some manners, but just because it's chaotic, maybe just more
Yeah.
chaos lately.
Yeah. The
Um,
industry looks different. I will say the one thing that I find rewarding about all the changes is when I started in this industry, there was no big 800-pound gorilla validating what we were doing. I was bringing home a paycheck and I was able to care for my family,
yeah,
but nobody gave their sort of housekeeping or good housekeeping seal of approval. And I feel like with Charles and Columbia and all these other private equity firms, Pamlico, they're saying this industry is here to stay and we want in. We want a part of the
yeah.
millions and billions of dollars that are being transacted annually because they see value in this space.
No, yeah. And I've always been of the thought that it's a very big ocean. There's a lot of end points in this industry. There's a lot of money to be had, and so if anything, that just kind of gives anybody that was wondering if this industry was going to continue doing well a little bit of a bullish indication that oh, there's definitely people coming into this industry and making their mark, especially over the past year. There were quite a few. I mean, just nice acquiring LiveVox. That's I can think of that one right off the top of my head just because I've dealt with the LiveVox people for a while now. So it's things are different. We've even seen just in my short time being in the channel, a couple TSDs get bought and just
Yeah.
gone. So it's when we came in, there were like 8 of them, and now there's 5 to six really.
I will say, I firmly believe that all of this is good for the industry. I think it's good for
Mm-hmm.
the agent. I think it's good
A
for the
competition
supplier.
breeds innovation and growth.
Yeah.
I love that. I appreciate that, Eric. I think that um, yeah, if anybody is watching and listening and they're not following Eric, make sure you do it. He's a great, not just people use the thought leader, but he's just a good person, and I think that is why his message resonates with so many people. It's why it resonates with me personally. It, I, I'm friendly to everyone, but for people to really affect me on more of a personal level, I'm pretty picky. And Eric definitely is someone that fits that. And so, Eric, I appreciate you being you. I do like to close out each podcast with just a quick, what are you doing? When you're not doing, I mean, you're traveling all the time. So when you're not running around or taking care of one of your many, many children, what's something that you do? Just kind of, cut away from it all. What's a hobby that kind of just gets you in the zone and recharges you?
That's a great question, man. You stumped me on that one. I will say you talk about me traveling a lot. And for those that have been in the industry for a long time and are kind of an elder in the space, like myself or anyone that's new to the business, the one thing that I've been challenged by over the years that I've really decided in the last 3 months is going to change is my priorities. Travis, listen, man, I love you like a brother. There's a lot of people in this industry that I care for so, so much. But if given the opportunity to go to an Ohio State football game with Travis, or take a trip with one of my kids, or even just play ball in the front yard with my one of my boys or one of my girls for that matter, I'm going to choose hanging with my kids. I'm going to choose sliding into bed with my wife at night versus sitting at a Marriott somewhere.
Oh,
So I
amen.
think for me, one of the big eye openers is none of us are guaranteed anything. Tomorrow may not happen. And, I've read this countless times. I believe this for even the companies. Listen, I've held the position as podcast host for 3.5 years. I've talked to folks from the CEO of Chipotle to the founder of Reebok, the founder of Anytime Fitness. I've had 150 conversations with really intelligent people on these topics, culture and leadership. And I firmly believe the sentiment to be true that, Travis, if you die tomorrow, they will have your replacement in that chair before your obituary is printed. It's a horrible thing to say, sorry, but business is business and they will move on without you.
Yeah, I mean,
Your family, on the other hand, you are irreplaceable. And so for me, when I've got downtime, when I'm not working, when I'm not traveling, for me, that thing that gives me life is spending time with my family. And I've decided to reprioritize. There's this great trip later this month that I would love to take to the Pacific Northwest. And I would love to see the people, but the business portion of what could be done in Portland can be done via Zoom. I'm going to
yeah,
miss the fun, but I'm choosing to miss the fun to watch my kids, to spend quality time with my wife, and to be present in the moment. So, listen, I suck at it today. Travis, Josh, anybody watching or listening, seriously hold me accountable to that, because I think we've all learned with some recent passings in our industry
yeah,
that tomorrow's just not guaranteed.
absolutely. That's why it never pays to be mean. It's just, if you smile and you're friendly to everybody, I promise you, you will live a more fulfilled life.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thanks for joining me today, Eric. I hope everybody enjoyed this podcast. Eric is a great person, great friend, and it's just it's nice to have him on here, and so more people can hear about the man that unfortunately is stuck with me.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much
All
for
right,
having me on the
love
show.
you, man. Thank you.
You too, brother.